What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto was raised by the Joker, or what if Naruto had a shape-shifting bloodline and was insane, go check out my main channel. And if you're interested in what if Naruto was taken over by the Kyuubi when he was born, or what if Naruto was trained by Itachi after leaving Jiraiya, go check out my second channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. Inari stood outside crying his heart out. The dinner was a complete disaster to all parties involved. The boy is quite at fault, no doubt about it, having once again thrown one of his tantrums at the exhausted sight of Sakura and Sasuke. Unfortunately, this time Kakashi was not quick enough to prevent a rather thoughtless comment from Nezo that ended in the boy fleeing from the house, tears trailing behind him. It was quite some time before the young boy noticed someone standing near him staring at the pale crescent moon as it shone down upon the earth. He could not make out too much of the figure save for the long blonde locks that flowed past his shoulders. For a while neither spoke, then the figure turned his gaze upon Inari, and it was all Inari could do to stay rooted to the spot. Though the apparition seemed no older than the Genins inside his house, the boy standing before him seemed to have hailed from another plane of existence altogether. His eyes were as bitter ice, freezing and yet burning to the touch, and all about him the air hung thick unnaturally. So who are you? At last Inari found the courage to question the stranger, his muscle tensing in preparation for an escaped strength. What does it mean to be strong? The figure asked as he returned his gaze to the uncaring moon. His voice was low, as though speaking to himself. To protect someone precious, that is where true strength comes. To protect someone precious is to be truly strong. Inari stared at the stranger in surprise. Somehow the words spoke to him. They seemed to resonate with something inside of him, something someone told him a long time ago. If something is precious to you, protect it with all the strength you got, even at the risk of your own life. Dad, he whispered, clutching his cloth tighter about himself. Is what you said true? Then all this time have I been running away? Mama, Grandpa, they were all precious to Inari, and yet all he ever did was cause them pain. He should be protecting his precious persons, but instead he had made them suffer needlessly. I'm sorry, Dad, Inari murmured, trying to keep back the overflowing tears as memories flowed back to him, reminding him the horrible tribulations he had caused his family to endure. I won't run away anymore. I protect them even at the risk of my life. Yet when he looked up again, the stranger was gone. Are you okay? Kakashi stared worriedly at the young boy. He had reprimanded Nezo severely for such reckless words, and yet no amount of scolding could undo the hurt that Nezo had caused. But to his surprise, Inari was smiling weakly. It wasn't the smile that had taken the Sharingan master by surprise, it was the light of change shining in the boy's eyes that had shocked him. They were full of a conviction that Kakashi knew all too well. He had seen it in the eyes of so many great shinobi. It was the will of fire through even death itself. I'm fine now. Inari's smile grew brighter as the two of them headed back towards the house. I know what I must do now. Really? At this the silver-haired Jonin raised an eyebrow. This was certainly more than he had expected. Many a man wanders through life having lost all sights of themselves, and yet here a mere 10-years-old boy had found his own path. Yep, Inari declared somewhat loudly. An angel showed me the way. Unbeknownst to the two figures, Naruto watched the exchange from above in silence, marveling at the irony of it all. An angel indeed, he thought grimly. Demon is a more appropriate term, yet if he is indeed a demon, why then would he have aided the boy in his self-search? Why did he reveal his presence to the boy? Because you wanted to be forgiven, a voice said in the back of his mind, a voice belonging to neither the fox nor himself. Forgiveness, is that what he wanted? To wash away his sins one small stain at a time. Haku had changed him, and at an alarming rate. Years of frost had begun to melt away slowly, restoring the human that lay beneath. He could still not be called wholly mortal, but stronger and stronger. His frozen heart began to beat. Inari sobbed quietly to himself as he sat hugging his knees close about himself. He was still so useless, so weak. He can't even defend his own mama when she most needed him. If not for his cowardliness, she might still be free instead of being taken hostage by Gato sword-wielding thugs. They stormed the house looking for someone that they might capture, someone that they could use as a trump card against the ninjas and the old bridge builder who the ninjas protected. Granted, it is a dirty trick that they are concocting, but it remains throughout history as a damn effective one. These shinobis holds themselves as more or less heroes, and self-righteous fools like them could never allow an innocent damsel to die before their very eyes. Now can they? Even if the ninjas do not relent, it is doubtful that Tsuno would allow any harm to come to his only daughter. Either way, things would work out perfectly for Gato and his criminal empire. One thing led to another, and soon Tsunami found herself making a desperate bargain with the two samurais. In exchange for her cooperation, they would allow Inari to go free and alive without any other choice, for the woman threatened to bite through her tongue. The two men agreed and sent Inari to the family kitchen, where he now sat crying. Why was he so damn weak? Inari questioned as his fist clenched tightly, his nails digging into the flesh. He promised to become stronger, promised to have a stronger resolve. And yet in the face of danger he found himself nothing more than the child he had been before, pathetic, helpless, and alone. He couldn't do a thing to help his mother, he couldn't even protect her from lowly criminals like those two swordsmen. Why is he so damn weak? Everyone else is so strong, so awesome, the small boy thought sadly as the faces of his family and the ninjas resurfaced. His grandpa Tazuna, who wanted to restore the Wave Country, even at the risk of death. Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura. Even though the battle against Gado is something they did not need to concern themselves, these shinobis of Leaf nevertheless spied the evil that threatened Wave. These people, they were so strong because they fought not for personal gains, but to defend an ideal. I won't run away anymore, I protect them even at the risk of my life, he said. That hasn't he made a promise? No, an oath to himself. He won't run away anymore, he will stand and fight. Can I be strong too, Daddy? With that thought the young boy stood up, a new light burning in his eyes. Without hesitation Inari charged out of the broken doorway, running full speed towards the samurais that held his mother prisoner. It's a pity, you know, as Inari reaffirmed his resolve. One of the samurai had chuckled as he stroked Tsunami's face, that the boss wanted her unharmed. With a face and body like that she'd make a fine lady. The other man laughed lecherously, though his hands still held onto his weapon in case the woman made any sudden movements. Well, once he's done, there still might be something left of the last for us. As Tsunami said nothing, her eyes gazing steadily forward, her lips pale with disgust, yet no fear flickered across her face, even as the two men discussed with great vigor the various things they would have subjected her body to. She will not allow them to see the terror in her heart, to give them the satisfaction of knowing that they hold power over her. Then her eyes opened wide, as she detected movements from behind her, and a single scream escaped her mouth. Inari, and oh, but too late already. The two samurais are running top speed towards the boy, their face alight with a joyous savagery. Finally, after so long without blood, their weapons could once more sate their thirst. Yet even as their shadows descended upon Inari, thin red lines appeared all over their body, lines that grew and branched until it covered their whole bodies like some misshapen web. Their movement ceased even as they tried to unsheath their blades, and there before Inari the two men stood still as though they have been turned to stone. Suddenly, without warning, there came a sound as fleeting and unreal as a passing nightmare, chilling and merciless. The voice was soft, and yet all that was present heard its words. It was as though some ethereal and unseen phantom had whispered next to their ears, though they could not feel a thing. You who are a disgrace to the path of the sword, die by the art you so tainted. The voice was neither full of hatred or anger, yet it was more settling than either. Sword art flash. As the word fell silent, the eyes of the two samurai widened as their souls fled from their body. A single second of absolute silence passed, and the two men's bodies exploded into bloody mists. When the red haze has settled, nothing remained of them but droplets of blood that clung onto the earth and stones. I have discovered your associate's location. It would seem as though they are currently under siege by two other mana signatures. One of them remains alien to me, but the other one should be very well known to you. Kyuubi spoke up suddenly as Naruto had once more dismissed his blade. The blonde nodded as he took to the skies, wondering whose presence the fox might have sensed. The number of individuals that are well known to the boy is far and few in between. In fact, now that he thinks on it, only 3 human in this world could have made the claim. One is the Hokage, and the other being Kakashi, and the last is a Yuhaku. So fate has chosen us to meet in combat. Naruto mused as he flew his cloak billowing behind him. So be it then, show me Haku this strength you claim, show me the power that comes from your precious person. Arrow Sharingan. Kakashi sighed in relief as the heavy mist Zabuza had gathered was blown away by a sudden gale, just in time for him to intercept a bone-crushing blow from the mist. Nin, though he managed to guard against the blow, the force of the punch nevertheless sent him skidding backward right next to the black cloaked form of Uzumaki. Naruto, who watched Kakashi rise to his feet with amusement, or at least as close to it as the feeling-less boy could muster. Sakura gasped as her eyes opened wide in recognition. She remembered this boy. It was the same one she had found unconscious in Konoha Park. But what on earth is that same strange and handsome two piped in her inner persona doing in a place like this? More importantly, why is her sensei looking at the boy with a mixture of relief and annoyance? Took your sweet time, huh? Kakashi asked as he dusted the debris from his Jonin vest, although from the crinkling of his eye it is not too difficult to tell that he is not truly angry with the stoic boy. Forgive me, Naruto said, as his hand glowed green and soon a soothing light covered the Jonin. To the amazement of all, Zabuza included the wounds on the Jonin healed at a visible rate, the gashes and bruises closing and disappearing before their very eyes. Certain matter arose that required my intervention. A medic. Nin. Zabuza wondered as he took several steps away from the conversing duo. If the boy is indeed a master of the healing jutsus, then this battle may well be against him. But still it made no sense. The medic techniques that Zabuza had known all focused on only specific areas. To be able to heal the entire body as the strange youth had demonstrated would have required unfathomable chakra as well as unrivaled control. If the boy is that good, then not even Zabuza could have stood against him. Besides, judging by his weapon, the boy seemed to be proficient, no, a master at swordplay, effectively doubling his threat. Then there is the strange just the boy had displayed, the one that banished his fog. Zabuza had never even heard of an attack called arrow before, let alone understand its strength and weakness. The unknown is a shinobi's greatest enemy, and Zabuza have no intention of fighting against a foe he knows nothing about. He had been confident in his battle against Kakashi because Haku had analyzed the Sharingan user's performance, but against this boy Blizzard, massive pillar of ice rose up from the earth, converging towards the astounded swordsman. With a loud curse, Zabuza jumped upward in order to avoid a bloody death, yet even as he sailed skyward, Zabuza felt a shadow casting over him, and lifting his eyes saw to his horror the descending form of Naruto. He had barely enough time to raise his Zanbato in defense before the long Nodachi slammed him back down to earth below. Zabuza could feel his blade cracking under the monstrous strength of Naruto's blow. He could feel his bone giving away. Shit, he growled as he watched the boy running towards him again. Without a second to spare, Zabuza launched into a series of hand gestures just before Naruto's blade reached him. The Demon of the Mist finished the last seal hidden mist technique for the second time that day. The fog rolled in thick and blinding, engulfing the battlefield in its heavy presence, and for the second time came the whirling storm, scattering the mist from the still incomplete bridge. Unfortunately, the mist had merely served as a distraction in order to buy Zabuza more time, for even as the haze faded, the Demon of the Mist stood triumphantly upon the rolling waters below Naruto. Water, release water. Dragon missile. As though responding to his command, the water around the man surged forth, rising and twisting, forming into the shape of a massive serpentine dragon. The aqua creature gave a roar of fury as it charged towards the blonde, an unstoppable tidal wave of destruction. Yet no worry reached the boy's eyes as he pointed his right hand towards the raging dragon, as though with that single gesture he could tame the frenzied beast. Blizzard. The effect was instantaneous. Slowly from its snout first, the water that created the dragon froze solid until the once menacing serpent became nothing more than a gigantic ice sculpture, one that glowed rainbow beneath the sunlight. Before Zabuza had time to recover from his shock, Naruto came at him again, catching him unawares. Steel met steel as the two swordsmen clashed, and once more Zabuza felt the large Zanbato in his hand trembling at the force of the blow. With all the might that he could muster, Zabuza swung, pushing the boy back several steps, where he stood hovering a few feet above the water. Then Naruto moved. This time the boy, with a wave of his hand, dismissed Muramasa, much to Zabuza's surprise and anger. In a battle between the swords, to sheath away one's weapon before the battle is done is either an act of surrender or a grave insult. However, the man had no time to feel slighted, for before he could make a move of his own, the boy charged, forming an orb of purest chakra in each hand. Yet it was not that alone which surprised and even frightened Zabuza, but the fact that his opponent could command two elements simultaneously, for on his left hand Naruto held a blazing sphere of fire and on his right a sphere of arctic cold. Without a word, the twin spheres left his open palms and flew at Zabuza, almost as if they possessed a mind of their own. The missing Nin barely managed to escape the impact as the twin orbs collided, creating a massive explosion more devastating than he could ever hope to achieve. Panting, the self-proclaimed demon managed to land on the bridge again, but before he could perform a single jutsu or even speak a single word, an Odachi pierced his chest. The missing Nin gave a gurgling death cry and fell back into a puddle of water, a water clone. Naruto frowned at the sight, remembering the technique that he had seen in the Hokage's library. If this Zabuza is only a second-rate replica, then the real Zabuza must be behind me. A wall of ice rose up behind Naruto just as a massive Zanbato streaked towards the blonde. The crystal glacier shattered beneath the impact of the attack, leaving its summoner unharmed as the ice wall faded into nothing. Several more Zabuza came charging at the boy, all of whom were promptly banished into puddles of water as spikes of ice exploded from the earth all around Naruto like the sudden birth of some strange and deadly flower. Damn, the real Zabuza growled in frustration as he stepped into view. There was no way to win against the boy at all. Each time he attempted something, the boy simply countered it with those insane techniques that he had never even heard of. Hell, if he is not careful, he might not even survive the bout. Whatever the boy is, he is a hell lot more dangerous than even Kakashi. How the hell did I get into this mess again? Yet his reveries were cut short as Kakashi's voice sounded above the silence. Naruto, go and help Sasuke. I may not be in my top shape right now, but I can handle Zabuza well enough as you wish. Before Zabuza could speak, Naruto jumped past him and into the prison of mirrors beyond with a curse. Sabusa picked up his sword and turned to face Kakashi, his eyes radiating silent fury. It seems I was no match for your friend, he growled as he dropped into a fighting stance, but fighting against you should be a different matter. Is this the first time you've seen a comrade die before your eyes? Haku asked calmly as she stepped from her mirrors and focused her gaze upon the two boys. She had been surprised by how fiercely the Uchiha had fought against her, to the point that he was able to awaken his own bloodline limit. A battle is a battle, and though she respects him as a ninja, it did not change their relationship. But for some inexplicable reason she could not bring herself to deliver the killing blow, only induced the raven-haired teen in a comatose-like state of rest. He should recover soon, and by then it would be all over. Such is the path we ninjas must tread. Nezo's glance shifted from the advancing presence of Haku to the dead Sasuke, and suddenly the rich boy dropped to his knees and groveled before Haku, much to the girl's disgust. Please don't kill me," the boy whimpered as he retreated on hands and knees. I can't even fight. I am not a threat to you. Honest, look, you killed Uchiha, right? I mean, he is actually kind of dangerous to you, but I'm a failure at this shinobi stuff, and I promise I won't try anything if you spare my life. My parents are filthy rich, I'm not lying, and if you let me go I'll pay whatever you want. Haku's expression changed from one of pity to the deepest loathing. His friend, his comrade, had just sacrificed his very own life to save this boy, and yet this scum would beg for mercy from his comrade's assailant. Her eyes narrowed. Haku summoned several needles between her delicate fingers. There was not a shred of mercy in her eyes as she regarded the boy die. The needles flew true, or would have had not a blinding flash silver interceded their path. A single Nodachi stood quivering before her, its blade buried deep into the earth. The sword is massive even for a Nodachi, as long as the Zanbato Zabuza wields, perhaps even longer by several inches. The surface of the weapon is unadorned, though several points of dim light seemed to shimmer within the sword itself. Though the blade looked unmarked and untainted, the well-worn hilt of the Nodachi told quite another tale. Around the sword lay the scattered pieces of the Senbon needles that the deadly steel pierced in its flight. This is enough. A voice sounded behind the startled Haku, who upon turning found herself staring into those hypnotic azure eyes that she had come to know all too well. Shame washed over the girl as she stepped away from Naruto, drawing several more needles in the process. He found out, as she feared he would, what would happen now to her. Yeah, kick his ass. Nezo, upon seeing the sight, leapt up with joy, all his terrors forgotten as he beheld the sight of his savior. I told you I'm someone important. See, they even sent. Ugh! Even before he could finish the sentence, a blast of lightning smote where he stood, sending the unfortunate genin crushing into one of the ice mirrors, effectively rendering him unconscious and silencing his wretched words. Do stay quiet, Naruto muttered and turned to Haku again, his eyes revealing none of the hurt, the betrayal Haku had anticipated. There was only a sense of hard to make out peace that surrounded the boy. Haku, why is he so calm? Haku wondered as she removed her mask hesitantly. Why isn't he angry that she had practically lied to him about everything all this time? Her words had been hollow whispers of untruth that she could not follow, yet he was not angry despite all that. Why? Haku found her lips moved despite her mind. Why did you come here? You weren't supposed to see me like this. Tears trailed down her cheeks as her words grew weaker and weaker. It tore her apart to have to lie to Naruto, for in the short times that they were together their friendship had turned into something more for Haku, something that was almost like love. Yet what occurred next, no one this world or the next could have believed in. An act of gentleness that was utterly alien to the boy. Naruto reached up and brushed away the falling tears. Why do you cry? He asked, puzzled. Though Haku had awakened the shadow of humanity inside him, he still could not understand the mental tortures that humans put themselves through, yet somehow, for reasons totally beyond his comprehension, instead of calm down the poor girl, it made her tears flow all the faster. Then, without realizing what he is doing, Naruto gathered the girl into his arms where she leaned against him, her frame raked with sobs. I lied to you, she stuttered as she managed to control her emotions once more, though she seemed reluctant to leave Naruto's embrace. Is this love she is feeling, or simply a sense of belonging? I said children are born without sins, and yet Naruto frowned. He honestly did not see how this could have inspired such sorrow within the once placid girl he had met in the woods, for that matter. Why did his body react to Haku's sadness in such a manner when his mind was still processing the various solutions that he could take? It seems to the swordsman that more and more his body is acting independently of his mind, which in his case is not a good thing. Luckily, it seems that these moments occur only when he is around females, primarily Haku. Perhaps it is a natural reaction due to his biological structuring, the blonde thought, trying to identify the cause for his irrational behaviors. While he has never had the talk of birds and bees, Naruto did not truly need it. All that information, along with history, mathematics, physics, chemistry, politics, and more, are stored within his brain as a result of the various experiments that molded him into the weapon that he is today, or maybe just maybe it is the result of the unconscious influence left behind by Zack during the times they traveled together. Despite being somewhat of a womanizer, Zack always considered himself a knight and champion for the fairer sex, and always stressed the point to Naruto as well, though the latter was far too impassive at the time to give the thought a damn. Perhaps the words left a deeper impact than any of them had thought, whatever the cause. When Naruto spoke again, the harshness of his voice is noticeably suppressed, though not without some effort on his part. One did not befriend you because you are sinless, Naruto said slowly, feeling Haku's warm form tensing in his arms. I befriended you because in spite of your sins you looked at the brighter side of life. In spite of your taint you retained the purity and innocence that I was never allowed. Haku pulled away from him and delved deep into those oceanic depths. Is this true? She asked in a trembling voice, hoping against hope that moments from now the scene would not shatter into dreams. Naruto nodded in confirmation. Why did humans feel the need to repeat their questions in order to secure their faith? Haku showed Naruto a teary smile as the ice mirrors began to dissolve around them. Then all of a sudden her eyes opened wide as realization hit her like a speeding train. Oh my god, Zabuza-sama! In her encounter with the blonde, all thought of the man that had saved her was forgotten, and the knowledge of this upset her immensely. How could it be that the presence, the existence of someone who she had known for mere days overshadow even so much as to bury the presence of someone who she had served her whole life? Was Naruto so important to her that already he has replaced the place of Zabuza in her heart? Yet even as she dashed full speed towards the two Jonins, she felt Naruto's hands holding her back. No, in a voice much colder than before, Naruto held the struggling girl still there. Battle is one much higher than your current level. Your intervention would only result in needless injury. Remain here. I will see to it that their battle is ended without bloodshed. Haku nodded, placing her faith in the boy that was both close and distant to her. She did not know why she felt so great a trust towards the reserved blonde, but she did not really care for the reason either. Naruto could not have picked a better time to appear. According to Zabuza, as he later recounted the encounter, the demon of Kiri was held down by the various ninkins Kakashi had summoned, totally defenseless to whatever jutsus the copy nin might throw his way, and it so happens that the shinobi in question is in the process of forming one of his most powerful techniques. Yet the lightning blade Raikiri, you're willing to sacrifice this place and everyone in it just to advance your own ambitions? That is not what a true shinobi does, Kakashi growled, as visible chakra cackled around his right hand. Both his eyes, the normal and the Sharingan, are wide open and both are fixated upon the trapped missing nin. Spare me the lectures, Kakashi, Zabuza snarled in rage, trying but failing to shake the dogs loose from his body. Though his efforts are doomed to fail, I am fighting for my own ideals, and I am not about to be stopped by soft fools like yourselves. I see. Kakashi sighed as even more chakra gathered in his right hand. His fingers bent, as though clutching some invisible object. The dust around his feet swirled wildly, their movements induced by the power of the Raikiri. Then your future is death. At full speed Kakashi charged, leaving behind a trail of lightning in his wake. The earth parted and gave away beneath the awesome force of the jutsu, and the very air seemed to burn before its unstoppable path of destruction. One of the primary weaknesses of the Raikiri lies in its need for its users to travel in a linear line, thereby exposing him or herself to many possibilities of danger and counter-attack. But against a foe whose actions are immobilized, the Thunder Blade Jutsu means death itself. So this is it. This is the way I die. Zabuza chuckled scornfully as he waited for death to come. He was not a coward by any definition, and he will not face death in any way save for with open eyes. Yet inches before him chest Kakashi's hand, and by extension the Raikiri, was stayed not by the man's own will, but by the hands of the same cloaked boy he had encountered earlier. I apologize for this, Kakashi-san, Naruto said as he dispelled the jutsu without so much as turning a hair, but I am afraid the man you call Zabuza shall not die today. I do not need your pity, Zabuza roared in rage as he broke from the hold of the ninkins and charged towards Kakashi. He may be a missing nin, but he is still the demon of the mist, still of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananin Shu. He has no sunken so low yet as to accept pity from a mere child. If I must go down fighting, then so be it, Kakashi sighed as he easily sidestepped the exhausted Mist Nin's attack, and appearing behind Zabuza buried one of his kunais deep in the man's arm, rendering it useless in combat. Now you can't use your arms, and your chakra supply is long dry, Kakashi stated coolly as he regarded the defeated shinobi before him. Zabuza may have committed unimaginable atrocities in the past, but he fought each battle with a determination and will that could be found on very few ninjas these days. Give up, Zabuza, hehehe. A voice suddenly sounded behind the combatants. Voice dripping with malice and cruelty. Zabuza's eyes widened as he realized whom the voice belonged to. He made a fine mess of you, didn't he? Gato chuckled darkly as he stepped into view, and behind him stood some 50 samurais, thugs and other lowlifes, all regarding the ninjas as though they were already dead. There has been a change of plan, I am afraid. The multi-billionaire laughed jovially. His eyes however remained mirthless behind the glasses, or to be more precise, your plan. Zabuza's eyes narrowed and barely contained fury as he spat out the words from between gritted teeth. So you planned this all along then? Gato snickered at the accusation, his hands resting on the expensive walking stick. But of course, demon, I am a businessman. After all, you Nookanins are all the same brainless fools who are so eager to tear each other apart, and by the time you're done, common thugs like the ones behind me can just finish off the rest efficient, and a hell lot more inexpensive and actually going through with my end of the bargain, you filthy slime. Zabuza growled. Though at his current condition it is doubtful that he could do much to Gato. Kakashi-san, it would appear that our fight is over. There is no more need for me to assassinate that bridge builder over there. Kakashi could only nod. Yeah, what more can you do even if the two of you team up against me? Gato sneered at the scene with obvious contempt in his eyes. Both of you have worn each other out so that even commoner bandits could take your life. True as that may be, a voice called out as several needle buried themselves in the ground before the criminal bosses, causing him to stumble backward in fright and surprise. But you seem to forget about me. Gato H. Haku. Zabuza for the first time in his entire life looked thunderstruck. He had thought for sure when Haku did not come for him that some tragic fate has befallen the girl, yet here she stood without so much as a scratch on her. At this he shot Naruto a curious glance. Even Kakashi's single eye went wide with astonishment. Uzumaki Naruto had actually allowed his enemy to live. Not only that, but the blonde had allowed his enemy to go completely unharmed. The copy Nin silently debated with himself whether or not to change his religion as to avoid the Armageddon that is sure to follow. Gato screamed in true fear as he quickly ran behind his bodyguards. How the hell are you still alive, demon slut? The man could not have picked a poorer choice of word if he had tried. For even as he spoke, he found himself the target of two massive killing intent, both of which are short-lived. As a killing aura washed over the field, Naruto's face still retained its frozen composure as he stepped in front of Haku, but his eyes spoke a different tale. Waves of terror radiated from his body and washed over Gato's thug. It was not the ordinary killing intent that many shinobi had mastered. Indeed, for the aura that oozed from Naruto's being possessed such intensity as to be almost material water, frozen solid as it passed, and plants withered and died. Frost covered the summer's earth in its wake, and the air itself grew icy. Do not insult her. His words seemed to hail from Makai itself, emotionless and quiet as death. For your words you shall burn in the infernos of hell. Bringing his blade forth, Naruto pointed the sword at Gato, and from his lips a single word escaped, a command that stirred the very elements around them. Thunder. As the last syllable is lost to the wind, the clouds above them shifted, hiding the sun from mortal's view and casting the earth below into shadows. Slowly the blackened clouds swirled above Gato and his men like a brewing maelstrom waiting to be unleashed. Then from the eye of the storm a single bolt of lightning streaked downward, carrying with it the vengeance of the thunder god. That single bolt is soon joined by another, then another, as it slammed into the ground where Gato stood, petrified by the event transpiring in front of his eyes. A dome of blinding light covered the earth, accompanied by the deafening roar of thunder as the light dissipated. All that is left of Gato and the mercenaries that he hired is a single smoking crater of some 30 feet in diameter, filled with molten rocks having melted in the intense heat. My god, Tazuna was the first to express his amazement at the unholy display of power. He was not the only one, however, to be stunned by the sight. Even Zabuza felt something akin to terror as he beheld the boy, although granted boy is a relative term in describing Naruto. Well, Kakashi spoke at last, breaking the silence. What do we do now? Naruto looked up at the sound and turned his gaze to Haku, who bit her lips in discomfort. She wanted to go with Naruto, but she can't just abandon Zabuza, who had saved her from death and raised her. Go with that boy. Zabuza spoke up suddenly. The life of a Nookanin does not suit you, Haku. You were always too soft, too innocent. This is no way to live for someone of your purity. You know, this battle made me realize something. Whatever we say or do, we ninjas are all too human. I have lost everything when I committed treason against the mist, but I do not want to lose you too. If I could not give you a past that you could recall with fondness, then I will make damn sure that your future is better than what I could give you. Zabuza-sama, Haku whispered as she did her best to dam the tear welling up in her eyes. What about you then, Zabuza? Kakashi questioned. Why do you not come with us? Even if he is a missing nin in their battle, Kakashi had almost come to respect the man. Besides, as one of the 7 swordsmen of Kiri, the presence of Zabuza could only strengthen the might of Leaf if he would swear his loyalty. Zabuza laughed a harsh grating laugh. Do you truly believe the Leaf will accept someone such as me, someone with the blood of hundreds on his hand? I am a monster, Kakashi, and my place is the wild. They accepted me. Naruto spoke up quietly, and even Sakura found herself listening to his words. They were melancholic, filled with a sadness that was barely detectable. It was the first time Naruto had spoke of his past to anyone even. Kakashi, what do you know, boy, of killing? Zabuza snorted, unimpressed. Whatever crime you have committed, it could not compare to mine. I have killed, Naruto said quietly, interrupting the larger man's words, yet the way he spoke of taking a life sounded strange, as though it was no more special than eating breakfast in the morning, for that was the purpose for which I was created. Yet if the Hokage would accept me into the confines of the village of Leaf, I do not see an exemption made of you. An uncomfortable silence hung thick in the air, broken only by the sudden sound of coughing of Sasuke as he came to. Sakura gave a joyous squeal and made her way towards the fallen boy near him. Nazo also stirred. Zabuza shook his head in disbelief. I must be going senile for me to say this. Very well, Kakashi, you have yourself a deal. Several days later, so I guess this is goodbye then, Tazuna said as he and the rest of the townspeople saw the party of 7 off at the bridge. We of the wave will never forget the service you rendered for us. With Gadogan, we may yet be able to bring life back to this land, so make sure you come visiting soon. Kakashi's one eye crinkled and he nodded in agreement. I'll be sure to keep that in mind, Tazuna-san. With that, the party departed, their forms growing smaller and smaller into the distance before they are gone completely. However, Inari dashed from his mother's side and called loudly into the mist, hey, guess what we called it? The Great Naruto Bridge. From beyond the haze came a single reply, soft and clear, that has a nice ring to it. Time skip. So this is the stronghold of the stone, mused Uzumaki Naruto as he surveyed the fairly imposing encampment below. Unlike the crudely made structures of wood and earthwork he had envisioned, the base of operation the Iwas had constructed gleamed in the sunlight, a result no doubt of the metallic surface that covered each of the buildings. Only a fool would have imagined this being the work of some leaderless missing nin. At the moment, however, the base seemed to be abandoned in a great hurry. Weapons, clothing, and even common things such as toothpastes lay scattered all around the camp, as though someone or something had arrived upon this stronghold unannounced, taking the IWA nins by surprise. Skin. A single word left his lip, and almost immediately information assaulted his mind. Not a single creature breathed within the base of that, much as magic had confirmed. Still, just because there is no blood here to sate the dark and ever-growing desire of the Dark Kyuubi, it does not mean this base would be left untouched. Just as mana swirled to life within his palm, however, there came the sound of approaching footsteps, growing ever louder. With a soft curse, Naruto dismissed the gathering powers and took to the trees for concealment. It would not do to alert the IWA nins of his presence now. In all honesty, the Hokage had been quite surprised when Naruto had chosen this particular mission, one of search and destroy in nature. The reason, when it boils down to it, was quite simple, at least for Naruto. The darker side of the nine-tailed fox grows ever hungry, imprisoned within the chamber of his soul, having lain dormant for over a year's time. The demonic creature's hunger could only be sated by vast slaughter, specifically the slaughter of ninjas, since for some odd reason the presence of a shinobi, particularly the shinobis of this world, often drove the Dark One to unimaginable wrath. So, after much delegation and a mere violation at the hands of a female Jonin Naruto did not care to name here, the boy stood at the branch of a tree, observing in secret the activities of what looks like 2 IWA Chunins below that had just emerged from a thicket of bushes. They were a rather pitiful sight to behold, hassled and bedraggled, their cloth torn to pieces with barely enough to cover up the essential swellings adorned their skin. The work of what seemed to be violent insects. Cut and bruises marked their bodies, with the right Chunin suffering a particularly nasty-looking black eye, and if observed closely one might just make out the faint outline of teeth marks adorning the left Chunin's leg. Son of a snake, the one of the left swore loudly as he tenderly nursed an injury on his arm. Those leaves fight like hell spawns. The younger Chunin on his right nodded in agreement, trying not to agitate his eye too much in case it worsens. Who'd thought those leaf nins mere children at that would have put up so fierce a resistance? Leaf. Naruto frowned upon the implication of those words. Children? What is a genin team doing all the way out here? Surely the Hokage had more sense than that to send group of children into what could veritably be called a war zone. Naruto's eyes narrowed in thought. What once had been a simple elimination mission has, it seems, taken a turn for the worse. The presence of the leaf nin is an unforeseen factor that, if allowed to run its course, could cause a great deal of problem if worse comes To worse, he may well have to sacrifice the team, but personally he believed he is more skilled than that. Surely the one and only protege of Sephiroth himself could not resort to compromises. First things first, to find out the location of those leaf neens. Well, it doesn't matter, growled the older of the Iwas, a sneer form upon his face. Our Jonins are heading there as we speak. They'll make short work of those brats. Alright, pity though that sensei of theirs was a bait. If the other could speak, it would have no doubt been an agreement. Unfortunately, before he could have opened his mouth, his entire body exploded into flame, even as the sky rained down bloody pieces of what once had been a Chunin. The older of the two companions felt a hand wrapping around his neck, squeezing the air out of him. Speak, and I might allow you to live. Naruto was not one to mince his words. Alright, the Chunin tried hard to hold back his bladder, though with blood and intestines dripping from his clothing, which had proved a valiant if futile feat. I'll talk, just don't kill me. Where are the leaves of which you spoke? Naruto brought the man to eye level so that the frightened Chunin gazed full into his twin cerulean eyes. It was as though the man had stared into the depth of hell itself, a hell of ice and frozen snow. They're about 2 mile north here. The Chunin stumbled across his words as fast as he could, but before he could beg for mercy, Naruto calmly snapped his neck. But even as he fell to an eternal sleep, his mind screamed betrayal. The man had told him he would allow the Chunin to live. The black-cloaked man had promised. My apologies, Naruto said without a shred of regret. I only said I might allow you to live. Double beast Fong, screamed Kiba as he and Akamaru shot towards the opposing stone ninja in the form of a whirlwind. The said ninja, caught unawares, felt the full force of the taijutsu as he was slammed backwards by the rapidly spinning genin right into a waiting Hinata, who struck the stunned nin with a barrage of gentle fists. The dog user cheered loudly as the shinobi staggered and fell under the force of the blow, only to feel a kunai grazing past his cheek, drawing blood. Gotcha, you stupid meddling kid, screamed another Chunin who had snuck up upon the dog user, launching several more kunais towards the surprised genin. The kunais would have flown true if not a black wall of insects rose to intercept their flight. Bug wall technique. Shino pushed back his glasses as the wall of insects fell to the ground along with the 3 kunais they had blocked. You should pay attention to your surroundings, friend. Meanwhile, one Nara Shikamaru and Akimichi Choji were like their fathers before them, working in a team. The unfortunate stone who was facing them was currently held trapped by one of Shikamaru's shadow techniques as Choji proceeded to beat the living daylight from the invader, a painful process. Rest assured, of the 6 genins that came under fire, Ino had arguably the easiest time, having taken control of a weak-minded but physically competent Chunin early on in the scrimmage. She was having a field day, turning the man upon his former comrades, with her own body closely guarded by the combined forces of Shino and Hinata. On the other side of the battlefield, Kurenai and Asuma are busy at work holding back the more skilled of the attackers. Normally a handful of Chunins could hardly be considered a challenge, but these particular Chunins are far more skilled than your average shinobis, each one definitely nearing the Jonin mark. Besides, there is also the safety of their students to consider if the 2 Jonin teachers were to unleash their more devastating arsenal. Damn, Asuma swore in his mind as he dodged several shurikens aimed in his general direction. What in the name of hell were so many stone ninjas congregating in this place? Surely they could not all be missing nins, could they? It was unheard of for so many missing nins of the same village to appear in so concentrated an area. It would have drawn far too much unnecessary attention, especially from the village that they betrayed. Besides, how could missing nins have the funding and the connection to construct so sophisticated a base of operation within these jungles? Most missing nins, aside from the S-ranked ones, had to work from dawn to dusk just to get by. Something suspicious is going on here, but unfortunately Asuma had no such luxury to further explore his intimations. Suddenly several more chakra flared up in their general vicinities, and the feel of it brought nothing but dread to the 2 leaf Jonins, as well as the stoic bug user. These chakra sources felt of stone and mountains. IWA reinforcements, no doubt several Jonin reinforcements at that. If anything but miracles occurs, they are royally screwed. Since the 3rd Shinobi War, the stone had long harbored a grudge against their foe, and due to the economic depression the loss of the war had brought them, that grudge quickly escalated into raw hatred. It was safe to say that once a leaf nin, regardless of rank, fell to the hands of a IWA shinobi, he or she could expect no mercy from her captor. Blood everywhere. As far as his eye could see, the missing nin could only discern the color of blood. It covered his shirt, splattered across the rocks and earth, flowing from the bodies of his deceased comrades, and the source of the blood of the hellish massacre was none but a boy that seemed to the man the spawn of the devil himself. How could just one person, just someone who's not yet a man, be capable of such carnage, such mindless destruction? How could one whose eye held no lust, no anger, no hatred, nor sorrow take so many lives without the slightest of guilt? The calm composure of his face, the grace with which he carried himself, it was as though human lives meant nothing to the pale-skinned blonde. Nothing but livestock. Stay back, screamed the IWA nin as he tried to put as much distance between himself and the advancing demon. A ninja is supposed to show no fear even before insurmountable odds. A ninja is always resolute, unshaken, and stoic. Apprehension and nervousness are alien words in the shinobi vocabulary, but such a vocabulary was reserved only for humans. It spoke nothing of a demon, a devil from the very abyss itself. Before a demon, every fear is brought to the naked light. Perhaps that is why humans called them demons in the first place, not because they were powerful or ferocious, not because they are mindless and bloodthirsty, simply because in their presence the ugliness humanity strives so hard to hide is revealed to all. Desperately the ninja reached for his final kunai, the one he kept well hidden in a small pouch. It seems laughable in the presence of so massive a blade as the one the youth carried, but in the end we would hold on to even the faintest hope of survival. With a half-crazed cry, the ninja leapt to his feet, swinging his weapon wildly, trying to fend off his attackers. He did not even feel pain as Naruto's blade danced across his body, cutting it to pieces. Where could those leaf nins be? Naruto pondered as he glanced around, ignoring the bloody aftermath of the slaughter. The smell of the jungle was overwhelming, so much so that he could not detect the unique leaf-like essences of the Konoha shinobis. Following that group of stone had led him this far, but it seems given the untouched flora of the area he still have some ways to go, and by then it may well be far too late. It was then he heard a high-pitched female scream, "Sensei, look out!" Looking back on it all, Shikamaru had to grudgingly admit that for once Ino's heartbeat-like screams had done some good. Granted, it was her insistent screams that had first landed the group in the situation. If only she had kept her mouth shut when they came across the two stone nins, but the fact remains that if not for her scream of bloody murder, the 6 genins and their sensei's name may well be added to the list of Kia. As the warning reached his ears, Asuma turned suddenly just as a katana slashed across the space where he had stood moments ago. Cursing himself, Asuma pumped more chakra into his blades and countered a second slash aimed to his head. He was getting slow, weak, and more than a little soft. Years of doing nothing but simple D and the occasional C-ranked missions had truly taken its toll. Hell, even Kurenai, who had been promoted to the ranks of Jonin only a few years ago, was outperforming the self-proclaimed veteran, silently promising to himself that as soon as this fiasco was over he'd take up training once more. Asuma threw himself into battle with renewed fervor. Gods be damned if he's letting his student die. Damn! One of the IWA suddenly looked up from his engagement with the female Jonin, his face twisted by old scars. Where the hell are our reinforcements? He was getting tired of this. The sooner they put these leaves to their place the better. Besides, the body of his opponent is looking rather tempting just at this moment. Licking his lip in a most lecherous manner, the stone Jonin turned to Kurenai, leering, "Tell you what, babe, I'll let you live if you'd." His words were cut short as a kunai embedded itself deep in his leg. The red-eyed woman faced him with a look of fury and disgust. "I'd rather die than let the likes of you touch me," she spat at the ground. "Then die, bitch," screamed the enraged Jonin, his hands moving rapidly to form a series of seal Kurenai had not seen before. Not particularly surprising given her knowledge of seals are fairly limited for a Jonin. Take this, earth release, earth-splitting spiral palm. Before he could complete what was sure to be a devastating technique, a long nodachi pierced his chest, skewing the man to the ground. The missing nin gave a cry of anguish and surprise as his life fled him, yet before his vision had failed him utterly, he saw before him an ebon figure stood, twin blue fires gazing at the dying shinobi from the shadows, fires that burned without warmth. Slowly the shadow approached, though no sound greeted his footfalls, as though he is but some phantom illusion, or perhaps the messenger of death himself, unseen save by the departed. The fallen ninja tried to speak, his throat convulsing with unspoken pleads, yet all that left his lung was a single shuddering breath as he took his last. Kurenai stared, mesmerized by her savior's movements. This was unreal. Everyone at some point of his or her life had entertained some sort of unlikely fantasy, and Kurenai, despite her no-nonsense front, is no different. She had as a girl and even into teenhood wished for a guardian angel, someone to watch over and protect her in her moment of need. As she left her childhood behind, so too did such foolish, albeit romantic dreams disperse, sinking into the sea of her long-forgotten memories. Yet as she beheld the blonde, his face seemingly carved by some angelic artisans, his hair the color of the raging sun, it suddenly occurred to her that perhaps she was not too old for fantasies just yet. The thought and the blush that came with it were repressed with a firm hand, but nonetheless it lingered. Asuma, on the other hand, was caught between relief and suspicion. It took skills to have taken down that IWA Jonin, as the boys had, and his sudden arrival had gave the Leafs temporary relief, and yet at the same time who's to say that the youth is not an enemy in an elaborate plan to lure the two genin teams into a false sense of security. Granted, the latter possibility sounded terribly complicated and more trouble than necessary, but still a ninja can't be too sure of his alliances. Something between fear and awe appeared on Shino's face, as he moved a little ways to give the youth some berth. As a bug user, Shino is far more sensitive to the feeling of chakras than perhaps all but a selected few Hyugas, although unlike that proud clan, Shino could not detect chakra strength directly, rather he could deduce them with pinpoint accuracy from the reactions of his bugs. The young Aburame had long ago learned in a lesson with his father that the Kakai bugs housed within his body react to varying levels of chakra quite differently, no doubt as an embedded instinct for survival long ago in the presence of a weak chakra, someone who could not threaten the well-being of Shino or his parasitic tenants. The bugs are quiet, carrying on their daily business as usual in the presence of a powerful chakra like that of a Jonin's. The bugs are skittish, almost panicky, signifying imminent danger in the presence of someone like the Hokage, and the bug behaved, quoting Kiba, like headless chickens on steroid. Never mind the fact neither ninja knew what steroid is in the presence of the boy. The bug's reaction is interesting, to say the least. They were motionless, not in the usual manner. Mind when a weak chakra presented itself at this moment. His bug is literally motionless, refusing no matter how Shino commanded them to move a single inch. It was an act of absolute surrender and trusting fate into the hands of an entity the bugs dare not offend. Scary thought. Looking around, Shino decided that he was not suffering a hallucination, for that dog of Kiba's, Akamaru, had thrown itself to the ground, paws covering its eyes, trembling in terror. An Incan sense of chakra is sharp, almost as sharp as his bugs. If Akamaru is acting this way, then there is no doubt to him that whatever power housed within the boy is beyond even his imagining. He could probably level the entire jungle if so inclined. Shino had no idea how close he came to the truth. How one of the remaining IWA Jonin sneered, trying to bolster his comrade's failing courage. Just some no-name kid, and here I thought those of the Hidden Leaf look out for each other. Hell, as soon as the rest of us arrive, you are all going down, whether that brat's here or not. Asuma paled. More reinforcements. The Jonins he had dealt with earlier had drained a lot out of him. The Hidden Leaf Jonin doubted that he would be able to deal with another such wave. Next to him, Kurenai is thinking along the same line. As a female, her chakra capacity isn't high by any means, and the consecutive genjutsu she had executed to confuse her enemies had taken a lot of her energy, and what remained is definitely not enough to deal with even more Jonin leveled opponents. Reinforcements. The blonde swordsman, who had appeared from nowhere, questioned. A soft, merciless smile tugged at his lip. I think not. A moment of silence passed and nothing animal or human came into the clearing. The IWA Nines began to sweat. Where were they? The Jonins that were their backup should have arrived some time ago. Slowly realization began to dawn upon their leader's face, and with horror did he behold the boy that had suddenly turned into a monster. Truly I had expected better from those hidden by stones. Naruto finished, and to the Iwasa's whispers were the voice of the devil himself. Damn you! Driven by madness or by rage, the leader of the IWA Nin leapt towards Naruto, kunai drawn and clutched in his hand. The rest followed suit, hoping to avenge their fallen comrades. Such are the follies of fear and rage which would have men throw away their lives against enemies they could never match. Such are the shadows that enshroud the hearts of men, inspiring them to foolishness that brings nothing but ruin. All the Genins could see was a flash of silver as something arced through the air, and as it passed the enemy shinobis dropped one after the other, blood spraying from wounds inflicted by some invisible assault. As the last of the stone ninja fell dead at the youth's feet, the silver took form in his hand as the same Nodachi that seconds ago had been embedded in the back of some misfortunate IWA. How the boy had conjured the blade or manages such a blinding attack is not only beyond the understanding of the Genins but of the Jonins as well. Never had they seen anyone with such mastery of kenjutsu, if one could call it that. The form, the speed, the grace of it seemed to have transcended simple swordsmanship. It seemed almost to be alive now. The blonde intruder spoke suddenly, much to the surprise of the Genins and their teachers. Looking back at the chaos the youth had wrought, it was no surprise that they'd flinch at his words. I assume you are the Hidden Leaf Nins who came under siege by the stone Nins. Asuma nodded, still keeping distance with the boy despite the fact if the youth really does harbor some sort of hostility towards the eight, none of them would survive the encounter, and you would be Uzumaki. Naruto, currently independent agent of Konohagakure. Naruto introduced himself simply. Asuma breathed a breath that he did not know he was holding and approached the boy. Now he remembered seeing the youth at his father's side a number of times usually engrossed in deep and meaningful conversation. Asuma assumed it to be meaningful given the chain smoker had no idea what the hell the two of them was talking about. Granted, it could be porn, but Asuma liked to give his father the benefit of the doubt that, and it was rather disturbing otherwise to think such things of one's own father. Ahem, glad you showed up in time or we'd be in a real jam. Name's Asuma. By the way, I trust you are acquainted with my old man. Naruto nodded as he studied the older Jonin, much to the man's discomfort. Screw what everyone said. Byakugan had nothing on this youth under the scrutinizing gaze of a pair of Byakugan, and you may feel like you are stark naked, but under this boy's gaze and you feel like every secret you ever held or will be holding is completely and utterly brought to light without any personal preference. Asuma hated it. Your father spoke well of you, Naruto informed him, though lung cancer is something you could do without at this Choji. And Ino laughed, and even Shikamaru could not help but smile just a bit. Trust the Hokage to hit where it hurts, Asuma grumbled, but threw away the cigarette he had just lit for himself. Pleased to meet you, Naruto-san. Kurenai, deciding to rescue her co-worker out of an uncomfortable situation, spoke up with a formal bow. My name is Kurenai, and I am just as grateful for your aid. Thinking nothing of it, Kurenai-san. Naruto returned the greeting with a nod of his head. Now then, it would be your best interest to leave this place at once. About 70 or so miles north of here is a Konoha outpost, your original destination, I believe. Seeing the nods and murmurs of agreement, he continued, however, given that a number of IWA still lurks about and is likely to attack your group out of revenge, I shall accompany you both for your safety and to fulfill my given task. Given task? You don't look old enough to be entrusted with some important task alone. Thoughtless as always, Kiba echoed Naruto's words, completely ignoring the fact that Naruto had just single-handedly decimated an entire group of low Jonin-leveled shinobi with ease. He was reminded of this fact when Ino slapped the back of his head and muttered something to the dog user I mean, never mind. Good. Naruto began to walk away. Follow me if you wish to live. Harsh Choji shook his head as the group followed him without too much complaint. Between the stoic youth and bloodthirsty IWA means, only a fool would have chosen the latter. Fire burned low in the forest grounds as the two teams of Genin plus Naruto gathered near it for warmth. Dinner had been a surprising noisy affair, Naruto had discovered. Much to his dismay, the Genins chatted animatedly as they ate their rations as though they had never come under attack mere hours ago. How they were able to maintain such enthusiasm and such optimism is beyond Naruto, and he dared not guess. Just in case it was catching black, Kiba growled as he choked down his mouthful of food. What is this stuff? Soldier bars. Asuma offered an explanation as he stared distastefully at his own supply, obviously not too keen to consume the stuff. It was developed back in the Third Shinobi War when cooked meals were an unaffordable luxury. It's packed with enough nutrients and vitamins to last you a day or so, but it's disgusting, Ino complained. And Choji, the food expert of the group, nodded his approval. It tastes like the developers back then weren't very keen on how it tastes as long as it's humanly consumable. They are okay with it. Kurenai shrugged, offering her own history expertise. Surprisingly, the one who offered the least complaints is the one who had the most right to. Inada Hyuga had somehow managed to eat the whole thing without saying a word. One would have thought that, hailing from a family whose meals are fit for kings, the lavender-haired girl would have offered some words of displeasure, but no such comment came. Of course, Hinata's shyness may well explain her behavior, but Kiba would not allow the subject to drop. How come he's not eating this crap? All eyes turned towards where the dog boy was pointing. That is the silent figure of Naruto, who at the moment is eating from an exquisitely prepared bento box filled with a variety of delicacy. It was Haku who had made this for him when Team 7 had returned to Konoha. Zabuza was apprehended and underwent a period of parole before he is allowed to serve in the Konoha shinobi forces. Meanwhile, Haku, who was not subject of such treatment, was placed under the care of none other than Naruto himself. Having moved into the blonde's comfortable apartment, Haku took it upon herself to repay the kindness Naruto had shown her despite the latter's protest. Amongst the things she took care of was his meals, which Haku had insisted on making herself. She was a surprisingly good cook, as Naruto had discovered. As Naruto bit into a carefully made mikazushi, he could not help but feel several pair of eyes boring holes upon his back, eyes filled with greed, lust, and hunger. Turning, he found himself confronting several Genins whose eyes are steadily fixed upon the small roll he held in his hand, thin lines of drools running down their lips. The only ones who did not participate in this debacle were the two Jonins, who both stole furtive glance at the dishes now and again. Hinata, whose upbringing is too proper for such ill-mannered things, and Shino, who is Shino food, moaned Kiba as he reached out in a zombie-like style. Naruto found the scene rather disturbing, and so closing the lid of the bento box sent it into the nether realm where most of his items are kept. Food like sleep is nothing but a luxury for the young soldier. He could go on without either for over 2 weeks' time before feeling the slightest of ill effect. The scream of disappointment could be heard for miles as the bento disappeared. Ino could not help but blush. As she walked alongside Naruto, something about the boy seemed to call her to his side, and it had nothing to do with his face, which is finer in her opinion than even Sasuke's. There is an aura of maturity, grace, and even majesty surrounding the boy that the Uchiha prodigy lacked, and while both carried themselves with marked aloofness, Uchiha's attitude simply screamed arrogance, whereas Naruto's aloofness becomes of him as though one would almost expect such detachment in the youth. The more time Ino spent around him, the more she felt herself drawn to the blonde swordsman. It was though the youth is a puzzle, one that she could spend her entire life solve and get nowhere. Although a voice whispered at the back of her mind she would hardly complain if she did indeed do just that. Ino blinked hard and tried to keep the blush from her face as the voice of Naruto drifted over to her, discussing something with Kurenai-sensei. Where did that thought come from just now? Well, it doesn't matter, nothing can shake her faith in her Sasuke-kun. Right, for the first time in years, Ino wasn't sure. Hinata tried not to stutter as she spoke to the boy. She failed spectacularly as usual. In fact, if anything, her stutters only grew worse around the blonde youth, though for some reason he didn't seem to take notice of it and continued his conversation with the Hyuga heir as usual. It began simply enough when the white-eyed girl had spied her savior sitting alone upon a massive boulder, eyes closed in deep meditation. After hours of walking and fending off 2 groups of IWA means the group had settled for a temporary rest to regain their strength. Slowly Hinata approached the boy with much care, wanting to thank the strange blonde for saving her and her team. She had kept as quiet as she could, her footfall soundless as she neared the boy, yet before she could come within striking distance those piercingly cold eyes snapped open and regarded her once before closing again. "What may I do for you, Hyuga-san?" the boy had questioned with something akin to respect. "I just wanted to thank," the girl stammered pitifully, her tongue and mind refusing to work properly in the youth's presence. Yet the youth only nodded in understanding as he opened his eyes again, fully focusing them upon Hinata. "Understood, I appreciate the gesture, Hyuga-san." Her face turned bright red as she tried to continue the conversation for reasons that still eluded her. "That is, you could just call me Hinata." Naruto considered this for a moment and nodded again. "Very well, Hinata-san, do you have any further agenda?" It went downhill from there. Hinata couldn't remember talking this much in her whole life to anyone, most of whom would have told her with no amount of uncertainty that such things does not become a Hyuga heiress. Never mind some random person who she hadn't even known for 24 hours. She still kept most of her secrets, of course, like her relation with her father and sister, but what she had talked about was still rather private as well. Her likes, her dislikes, silly and frivolous things in her mind. Yet never once did Naruto rebuke her or even interrupted her. His expression showed clearly that he didn't care much for it all, but never once did he stop paying attention. Argiato Uzumaki-san," Hinata said at last when her sensei began to call for her name. "I am sorry for boring you with my words." Naruto smiled. Ever since Haku moved into his apartment, he found himself growing more human each day thanks to Haku's relentless efforts, whether she knew of it or not. That girl had made a place for herself in his still closely guarded heart, and as he now gazed upon the crimson visage of the Hyuga heir, the boy could not help but see the striking similarities between the two. Both were of such purity and innocence, such gentleness and delicacy. Thought Haku carried herself with distinctive more confidence. In time he is sure Hinata would too. "You have nothing to apologize for, Hinata-san." He rose and jumped down beside her. "I have enjoyed our conversation, if it is possibly." Hinata's blush grew all the deeper, however, upon this word. Hinata's entire being froze as she half wondered if Naruto too would take back his kind words and shatter her dreams as the others did. To her surprise, no such insults came, and the other half of her mind berated the girl on doubting Naruto in the future. "Please refer to me as Naruto." For the first time in years, Hinata smiled a true smile as she walked alongside the boy she had just befriended. Shikamaru didn't understand it. No matter how hard he tried, he could win. How is this possible? He knew there were other shogi players just as skilled as himself, his father being one of them, and yet even against his old man, the Nara genius had never lost this badly. It was as though Naruto could sense his thoughts, and each time he made a move the blonde would calmly deploy the necessary counter, rendering his well-formulated plan useless. He was, to put it lightly, being led by the nose. Each step he took played right into Naruto's hands, and Shikamaru hated this feeling of helplessness. For once the lazy prodigy focused every ounce of his concentration upon the game. Beads of sweat rolled down his face. Never had anyone drive him to such a state that would require every fiber of his intelligence not to win but for mere chance at survival. Naruto's eyes narrowed as well as he stared at the game board in concentration. "The Nara is good. He'll give the boy this much." Several times the genin is able to foresee a well-hidden trap and Steer his pieces clear before it had time to spring. Nonetheless, the boy is losing, if only by a few pieces. The genius of Shikamaru had served him well against others in the past, but against Naruto it did nothing. For as brilliant as the boy is, he is yet to grasp the true mastery of the game, a game of psychology. It was a game extending well beyond the pieces on the board. Capturing the pieces are simple as is winning the game, but dive beyond that to delve into your opponent's mind, to understand his motives, his thoughts, his strategies, to predict each and every move he will make, and in turn to turn such knowledge against him. That is the true mastery of such a game, a mastery Naruto knows all too well. By the tone of a person's voice, by their slight gestures, by their expressions, he could understand you more accurately in the space of a few minutes than most of your friends could in their life. Of course, such uncanny deduction ability is kept hidden, lest it should inspire further fear and distrust in others around him. Checkmate, Naruto stated calmly as he moved his promoted rook into position, firmly trapping the king of Shikamaru. The lazy genius gave one last desperate look at the board before bowing his head with a loud sigh, conceding defeat. Never imagined the day I'd see him lose at shogi of all things, Choji whispered to Ino in awe as the two watched the game in silence. His attractive teammate gave a firm nod, disbelief written over her face as well. In all her never, she could never recall anyone beating the boy at this game, not even her beloved Sasuke-kun, and yet this fameless boy, someone she had never even known existed before, now had seemingly crushed Shikamaru with such insulting ease. Well, a familiar voice smirked at the back of her mind. Things are getting interesting, aren't they? Time skip, sniffed Kiba for the third time as the Genins apprehended their sixth attacker. On the same day, he was not particularly skilled by any means, his power only that of a low Chunin, maybe even a Genin, and while with such discipline none of the Genins are a match for the man one-on-one with their powers combined, the man's fate could be nothing but defeat. What a bunch of weaklings! Shino could only shake his head at his friend's seeming unending arrogance. How could he recover that air of superiority so swiftly when mere hours ago the boy had nearly met his end at the blade of a nameless Jonin? The said Jonin had been disposed of quickly and cleaning by a single sword stroke from Naruto, a feat that still made Shino on edge. He was not made nervous by the youth's skill or grace, though they were by far the most impressive the bug user had seen. No, what upset Shino was the ease with which the youth took the man's life. Shino is not the most compassionate of humans by nature, preferring solitude and silence as his companion, yet the idea of killing did not sit well with the quiet boy, a fact many would have found surprising given so stoic and unmovable was his disposition. Of course, one must not mistake Shino to be kind by any stretch of the word. It is simply that the thought of taking a life that did not belong to you seems to him an injustice. After all, what rights do you have of ending someone else's existence when you yourself are just as sinful, just as guilty? And so while he will not hesitate in killing, especially to defend his comrades in arm, he cannot and will not take pleasure in such act, judging by his friend's expressions and the expression of two adult Jonins in the current group. The act of killing did not please them either. In fact, many times Shino was certain he could make out Kurenai-sensei, her eyes shut tightly as she decapitated her foe in a particularly gruesome manner. It was a good sign that she still could feel guilt. Such, it seems, is not the case with Naruto. He is, to his credit, not some bloodthirsty loony who radiated killing lust, but the knowledge of that did not appease Shino any. The boy, no, the swordsman, seemed almost incapable of guilt, of sorrow at the taking of a life. Hell, he seemed incapable of even pity when his eyes, cold and soulless, beheld the body of the slain. No emotion seems to register, just understanding that another foe had fallen. Certainly it would be unfair as to denounce the boy downright cruel, though the sheer carelessness with which he slew his opponent still made Shino more than a little uneasy. At times it felt awkward, and sometimes frightening, to go to sleep knowing that beside you existed one who would snuff out lives without regret or a second thought. Still, as of now, such an enigma is the only thing that stood between the eight-leaf Nines and certain destruction. So thought Shino as his mind wandered back to Kiba, his loud-mouthed associate, who was proclaiming again how the Iwas would rue the day they messed with him. Perhaps being a fool had its advantages. Shino smirked at the idea. At least they are not at all bothered by the prospect of trusting in a cold-blooded murderer. Nay, an angel of death seemed the more appropriate title. When are we going to get there anyway? Kiba questioned suddenly after a glare from Ino caused him to drop the subject of the missing Nines. 70 miles seem awfully long at our present speed, taking into consideration the layout of the forest. Asuma sighed as he took a long drag on his newly lit cigarette. We should arrive sometime this afternoon, if not earlier. Still be on the lookout for IWA Nines. We cannot allow our guard down just because we are "So near our destination," agreed Kurenai, who had walked behind the group a little ways. "Caught up with them. Once we reach the Fire Country border we should be safe from the attack, but until then we are fair game for the missing means," Akino declared loudly, causing Hinata, who was trudging next to her at the time, to jump in fright. "Why are these missing means so intent on targeting us anyway?" "Not missing means." Naruto, who though kept away from the group had obviously overheard the conversation. "These are loyal IWA means." Shikamaru and Asuma most nodded. It was just as they had supposed, although the others including Kurenai seemed a little confused as to what had transpired between the three. Seeing the look of confusion dawning the others' faces, Asuma decided to explain. "See, the ones attacked us back there are not missing means as we had previously assumed, but shinobis who are in active service to the Hidden Rock." His words, whereas he had suspected, greeted by incredulous stares, and so he continued, "They are posing as missing means in order to congregate in this area without causing a political rife. If IWA means were to discover in the area, it could lead to open warfare between the leaf and the stone, something that such a cage could not afford now. However, if the operation was discovered but only operated by missing means from IWA, then such calamity would be avoided. Even if we have reason to cast our suspicion upon Hidden Rock, without solid proof we cannot act upon them." He signed again and made an abstract gesture, basically a brilliant plan. They would amass forces in secret in order to mount assault upon the Land of Fire, and should they fail, no blame could be founded upon their village due to their missing means status. He turned and stared at Naruto and thought, "Am I correct, Naruto-san, in assuming that such is reason why you have come to investigate this matter at the behest of Hokage my father?" Kurenai raised an eyebrow. The strength of the youth is proven to her and her comrades beyond the shadow of a doubt, yet it still impressed her that so young a boy could be so trusted by the aging Fire Shadow. "Naruto-kun is so amazing." In her mind, Hinata whispered to herself, she always knew there was something about her friend that is out of ordinary, but to think the composed blonde would shoulder such responsibility. Already beside her, Ino was thinking along similar lines, though she seemed less than pleased at those thoughts. Ino is by no means a shallow, frivolous girl, yet no matter what she used to try and convince herself of Uchiha Sasuke's superiority, it failed time and again whenever she tried to compare the pretty boy to Uzumaki. As much as she hates to admit it, Naruto outstripped by far the so-called prodigy in every area she had thought up. He is a better fighter, a better strategist. He carried himself in a more noble, regal manner than the Uchiha survivor. Given the latter's near nobility status, hell, he is even the better looking of the two, if that amounted to anything. Akino felt the irresistible urge to scream in frustration. Why the hell is she letting Naruto get to her like this? For heaven's sake, she knew the boy for barely a day and a half and already he is invading her every thought. Each time she tried to remember the face of her beloved Uchiha, somehow inexplicably the sun-kissed blonde's cold visage would surface, eventually replacing the scowling image of the raven-haired prodigy. But the worst thing about this whole ordeal is Naruto did absolutely nothing to cause this at all. What the hell is this guy made of? She questioned for the 16th time. How is it possible that the young teen could attract the attention of every friggin' female without even trying to? Ino certainly isn't the only girl to have become interested in the glacial youth. She had caught more than once Hinata Hyuga staring dreamily at the boy when the young heiress thought no one was watching. Heck, even Hinata's Jonin sensei Kurenai had stolen a few glances at the boy once in a while. Whatever Naruto was giving off, it like everything else associated with the boy firmly outranked Sasuke. Damn it, see, even now her thoughts are still on Naruto. It was only when Naruto spoke up did her inner rants come to a stop. Not quite, Asuma-san, Naruto explained as he touched an obstructing tree branch, turning the protruding growth to ashes. It was not an investigation mission that I am charged with, but one of destruction. Silence greeted his words until Shikamaru decided to speak, his voice oddly spooked. You mean? Naruto nodded. Correct, my mission was and still is the elimination of the Iwas found near the fire border. Kurenai felt her jaws drop. Why would the Hokage, one of her most respected figures, charge a mere child to do such monstrous deed? Why would the old man allow so innocent a youth to stain his hands with bloodshed? It seemed so far-fetched. Even in a shinobi community, such a notion to her is barbaric cruelty, beyond imagining. To rob a child of purity, what kind of monster would wait? A kid like you. Choji seemed to have thought along the same line as the rather large boy blurted out in a strange mix of choking and laughter, as though he didn't quite believe the youth's words. Hardly surprising, he and his teammates might have faced and even dealt out death, but in the end they would not even have dreamed of purposely seeking out such atrocious deed. That sounds ridiculous. Naruto smiled softly, though the smile did not reach his eyes, which remained frosty azure. Be that as it may, Such is indeed my mission. Kurenai wanted to protest to question the wisdom of allowing someone so young to taste not only death but carnage. Even the semi-legendary prodigy Itachi, who lead his own ANBU team at the age of 13, were never charged with so grim a mission, and even then madness still claimed him. What would become of this child exposed to the follies of humanity so early in his age? Do not allow my appearance to fool you. Kurenai-san, for innocence can be deceiving as though sensing her disturbance. Naruto continued, his eyes resting upon the genjutsu mistress, piercing and knowing. Though I would prefer if we do now dwell upon such matters. Was it Shino's imagination, or did such sadness overtook Naruto for one brief moment as his words fell silent? Whatever may be the case, Shino knew none of them would sleep easy tonight. Target confirmed. Wait for my command, growled the seasoned Jonin as he watched the Leafs with angry eyes. He was surprised that for two measly genin teams these 8-9 were able to hold back two full waves of assault, not to mention the countless Chunins and Genins that had fell beforehand. Slowly his vision came to rest at the head of the procession, the two Jonins that no doubt lead this band of riff-raffs. No doubt once they are taken down, the rest of those children are easy picking. A smile spread across the Jonin's lip as he fantasized the multitude of pain he would inflict upon those brats. Once they fall to his hands, he was after all not called the child lover for no reason, grisly as that reason might be in his macabre desires. The man did not notice the blonde boy stop and gazed up at his hiding spot, a cold smile adorning his pale lips. Before joining the rest of the group, it would be his and many other Iwa's undoing, as they would soon discover. Be careful, Naruto's soft whisper carried over to the group, who tensed immediately when Naruto gave out a warning. It meant the enemy is ready to strike at any second. No chance must be taken that. And the fact the group became rather jumpy at his presence since the boy made the terrifying revelation. QB, how many of Iwas are there? Naruto called out in his mind, trying to reach his tenant. He is not disappointed, as the machine-like voice, though like him laced with subtle emotions, replied. 52 Jonins and 75 Chunins. The great fox frowned in concentration. I fear due to their number and scattered location, that simple area of effect spell will not suffice, and due to this world's limitations, the more powerful spells are no longer in our command. Naruto agreed. If worst comes to worst, we may well need to call upon their aid. Indeed, QB nodded. After much consideration, though the amount of mana required to bring forth one of their number may prove painful, it will not be beyond what healing aid I am able to lend. Still be cautious of your actions. With that, the titanic beast once more withdrew into his sanctums, leaving Naruto in utter silence. Once more, get ready, he commanded. As the genin group slowed down their pace, bracing themselves for the battle to come. There are over 100 of them. What? Asuma exclaimed softly as not to alert the watching Iwas. How are we supposed to hold back so great a force? I may be a seasoned Jonin, but even I cannot do anything against this kind of opposition. Do not panic, Naruto interrupted his words. As long as you follow my instructions, you will yet survive. Prepare yourselves. Them come now. As his words fell dead there, from the bushes, the trees, and from thin air, shinobis appeared, dressed in typical ninja fashion and sporting scarred Hatai 8 of IWA. There would be no doubt what these men are missing means, at least on the surface. Before they could speak, Team 8 and 10 launched their assault, catching many of the Jonins unawares. Sometimes it was polite and respectful to allow your foe time to speak, and other times it is a situation of life and death. This is painfully obvious. The latter barges of jutsu were cast in all directions, many of them hitting their marks dead on, and although the stone nines were caught by surprise, they were seasoned fighters, and so after but a moment recovered from their shock and mounted their counter-attack. Naruto danced amongst the thicket of things, his blade nearly invisible as it drew blood all around him. Ninjas fell wounded left and right, blood spurting from their chest and appendages. Those who were foolish enough to lock weapon with the blonde found themselves subjected to unimaginable forces, their kunais and swords shattering beneath the sheer brutal strength of each blow, sending them flying. A single shinobi dashed past Naruto's offense, and just as he was about to plunge his kunai into the damned brat's chest, fire erupted where Naruto stood, incinerating the man's body as the fire-quelled bolts of lightning shot out from the young swordsman's blade, weaving amongst the frightened shinobis as they ran for cover. Massive pillar of ice rose unannounced, impaling many who did not manage to dodge in time. They died with surprise in their eyes. Damn, Asuma swore as his trench knives slashed through his foe, cutting the man in half. That had been close. If he had stepped back 1 second too late, then it would have been him lying in that pool of blood. It was time to take this fight to the next level, the Jonin decided as he performed his trademark technique Heian at the command. His trench knives blazed with chakra, which slowly grew into the shape of blades, extending the reach of the already dangerous weapon. With a war cry, Asuma charged into a mass of Jonins and Chunins, his blades swirling around him in an azure blur. Blood flew all about him, some his and some his foes. There was a reason why he, Asuma Sarutobi, is the son of the god of shinobis, and these IWA nines are about to find out in a most painful manner. In an age of kunais and Katanas. Very few people use such an obscure weapon as the trench knife. Of course, as the Iwas soon discovered, these buggers can be quite painful if used in the proper manner. As a wind element by nature, Asuma is an all-out offensive fighter. Coupled with his chakra-laced weapon, the man could slice apart boulders, let alone flesh and bone. As the last shinobi fell dead, Asuma looked up from the massacre over to where Naruto stood, a massive lotus of ice blossoming around him, upon whose petals were embedded the body of numerous enemy shinobis. Well, at least the boy kills with style. Asuma shook his head. Father, what kind of monster did you unleash? Kurenai, being a genjutsu mistress by trade, preferred long-range combat, where her techniques have longer time to take effect. Unfortunately, when it comes to short range, especially hand-to-hand combat, the red-eyed woman is rather lacking. Certainly she could hold her own against any man when it comes down to it, but unlike most of her associates and companions, her arsenal of techniques is not quite suited for such situations. Still, for someone of her nature, she is holding up remarkably well against tides of enemies, laying the air around her with one genjutsu after another. Most of her foes became fairly easy picking once they fell trapped to her techniques, and the few that were able to keep a clear mind is soon disposed with some of the more generic jutsus and occasionally a good knee to the groin. Suddenly the red-eyed beauty let out a pained scream as a single kunai embedded itself into her leg. Turning, she saw to her horror a massive shinobi standing over her, his face contorted by hatred. With a savage roar, the shinobi produced yet another kunai and brought it down with considerable force, seeking to end the life of the raven-haired woman. Forever die, you bastard leaf. Fortunately for Kurenai, her time is not yet up, for even as the dreaded weapon made its fearful descent, a single hand, unblemished and delicate, caught the giant's wrist. With deceptive ease, the giant stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how anyone in this world could match his brute force. His gaze traveled from the offending hand to the face of the one who had accomplished such impossibility, and what he saw there seemed to shatter his entire world. A child no older than 12 stood beside him, restraining his struggling arm with all the ease of a man holding a feather. No emotion flickered across the youth's visage as he gazed calmly back at the man, though malice and killing intent were plain in his eyes and his action. In silence, the youth pulled back his other hand and struck like lightning. Kurenai, even with her discipline, could barely catch the blurring outline of the arm as it slammed into the burly Iwa nin's chest. There was a loud and resound crunch as several ribs broke off, blood dripping from the corner of the nin's mouth. A second later, the flesh began to sizzle and peel away as Naruto's fist glowed a brilliant red. The man's dying screams is only punctured by the smell of burning flesh as fire consumed him whole. Although the ordeal lasted barely a second, it seemed to the victim an eternity. Are you alright, Kurenai-san? Naruto asked as he gave a cursory examine over the wounded area. The jonin nodded and winced as she tried to take a step. It would seem the injury was worse than she thought. Before she could react, Naruto had extended a hand towards her, glowing with green chakra. Cure, the boy commanded as a soothing wave of green washed over the young female adult. Kurenai gaped speechless at the boy. First, the strange blonde had proven himself an unrivaled fighter. Now that same blonde had just demonstrated a technique that only the most skilled medic nins could use. Standing up, the genjutsu mistress gazed wonderingly at the retreating cloaked figure who was Naruto. In her mind, the same thought that had plagued her young charges again surfaced. Naruto! Asuma cried in alarm as even more shinobis began to press towards them, forcing the 8-leaf nins to form a rough circle. In his distress, the man had let go the respectful suffix that are usually attached to names, though given the current state of things that could hardly be considered an important matter. I hope you have a miracle stored somewhere. Naruto sighed as he studied the advancing forces. Though the Iwas, now down to 50 or so, had kept their distance, they would not be kept back for long with such numerical advantage on their side. Though the leaf shinobis had put up a valiant battle, they are no match for so many in numbers. The genins would be no help here. Although their abilities had served them well against chunin, they would have been no match against the more powerful jonins that now remained. And while both Kurenai and Asuma could hold their own against multiple opponents, they are hardly at a state to continue such a battle, especially since many of the foes now are just as skilled as themselves. Naruto sighed. Alone against these Iwas he would have suffered no difficulty in dealing with the waves of assailants, but to ensure the survival and safety of the leafs as well is a far more difficult matter. Unlike the former scenario, where his mind could focus solely upon the battle at hand, the latter and current scenario required his divided attention. It would seem there remains little choice for him but to call upon their aid. Kurenai felt she was dreaming. She isn't the only one. It was as though the entire world is engulfed by fire, the leaves and trees turned to ashes in milliseconds by the all-consuming inferno, an inferno whose source is none other than Naruto himself. The boy is surrounded by the terrible aura of power, one that easily dwarfed every other chakra source for miles, and yet somehow the chakra Naruto emitted felt strange, unnatural. It was not the blue chakra the Jonin sensei was used to, it was a shade of the most brilliant vermilion, not the red of the Kyuubi mind, which called to mind the memories of blood and slaughter, but a red that burned most vibrantly, full of life and a terrible thirst, the redness of flames. It wasn't her imagination, thought the shaking Genjutsu mistress as her eyes rested upon the glowing youth, for all around him beneath the burning chakra the grass withered and began to burn, as did the trees and the low-hanging vines. The air simmered beneath the supernatural heat, a heat that somehow the gathering shinobis could not feel, though its presence seemed certain enough. Then came the thunderous sound as Naruto began to speak, his voice echoing across the jungles into the darkening skies above. It was a voice of ancient flames raging silently within its chains. I call upon the ancient deity of fire, appear before me and unleash thy burning rages, come forth from thy realm of inferno's hell fire. Ifrit, there came a loud roar as the earth before Naruto cracked and crumbled, fissure appearing across the land. From forth the wounds of earth spewed magma, spilling onto the surface, melting away all that it touched. Then without warning a pillar of scarlet flames shot up into the heavens, parting the clouds and bathing the world in its terrifying radiance. Within the pillar of destructive light there formed a massive bestial shape with a primal roar of rage. The beast stretched to its fall height, scattering the flames that once birthed him, twin massive horns sprouting from its monstrous head and angling behind him, eyes the color of raging storm, its bronze-colored body encircled by clouds of fire. It seemed to all truly a creature not of this world, a demon from the darkest pit of hell, bringing with it the fires of eternal damnation. Your will summoner, growled the fierce creature in question. Destroy them, Naruto said, pointing a figure at the petrified Iwas. Leave none alive, your will be done. The creature bowed its head, then looked up again. Fire erupted from its mouth, from its extended hands, from his feet, and every part of its body, until the infernos enveloped it slowly. A single flame-covered fist was raised to the heavens, a massive sphere of blistering heat forming in the burning palm. The Iwas and the Leaf Neens stared mesmerized by Ifrit's awesome strength, their body unmoving as they beheld the slow expansion of the orb of conflagration. With an earth-sundering cry, Ifrit brought the sphere down into earth, creating a dome of fire that enveloped all at its appalling grasp. Nothing was left behind in its wake, neither rock nor stone or flesh. Everything within hundreds of meters became nothing more than ashes, a blackened cleaning that bore witness to the otherworldly power that was the Leaf Neens, shielded from the blast by Naruto. The only ones to have survived this unstoppable onslaught stared speechlessly at the annihilation their blonde companion had caused. It felt surreal, as though they were still part of some waking nightmare. Slowing they turned trembling to Naruto, who knelt on one knee a little way from them, supported by only his Nodachi. Smoke rose from his body's his robes tattered, revealing black patches of burnt flesh. As I thought, without material I could barely control the mana flow of my body, Naruto thought as he stared at his ashen hand. I hope I would not again relish such unpleasant experience in the future. Fortunately for the boy, even as his mind wandered, he could feel the strange mana of the Kyuubi repairing his body, rejuvenating his dead cells, and stimulating cellular replication. Normally such healing process would have shortened the span of any human, but for Naruto, charged with Mako, his body structures had been altered beyond recognition, and so the powers of Kyuubi held little negative impact upon him. It would seem being inhuman had its occasional perks. Is everyone safe? Naruto questioned. The others nodded dumbly, not trusting themselves to speak. Naruto sighed as he rose. Now would be a good time to depart from them, it would seem. Slowly he rose into the air and turned to face the travelers once more. My mission is accomplished, and the outpost is only a short distance away now. Then I shall take my leave of you. Yet even as he was about to take off, a timid voice interrupted his flight, a voice he identified as belonging to the shy Hyuga heiress Arigato, Naruto-kun, she whispered, though her words nonetheless reasoned the solemn boy. Yeah, Ino said, walking up to the stuttering Hinata. She did not know why she did as she had. She did not know what nameless impulse spurred her to such an action, but looking back on it years later, she knew beyond doubts she had done the right thing. Thanks, even if you were a little holier than thou, agreed Kurenai, smiled, a rarity for the serious Kunoichi. We don't know what you hid from us, and we will not inquire, but no matter what, we still owe you our gratitude and our lives for what you have done. So taking a deep breath that brought to attention her rather generous assets, the sensei of Teen 8 bowed. Arigato, Mekiba grumbled, rubbing his nose with an index finger. You're not bad, I guess others too, following their example, soon offered their own words of thanks. Naruto looked startled by this, then to the surprise of all smiled, not his usual humorless smile. Mine this time. The smile had reached his eyes. You're welcome, the soft whispered continued to linger even as the boy took off into the distance horizon, unknown to the vanished youth. Long after he departed, a single thought had remained in Kunoichi's mind, a thought that would prove in the future the metaphorical fall of the blonde. Wow. Naruto is hot when he smiles. Damn you Uzumaki Naruto, damn you Sephiroth had a good day, a day of maiming and killing and burning down random villages and leaving behind survivors who hate his guts and would eventually defeat him in some spectacular showdown or other by utilizing cheap limit breaks that shouldn't even have shown up because the limit gauge was not filled. All in all, it was a good day then. He felt the beckoning, the irresistible urge to unfurl his wings and descend before Cloud and his party of strange and unrealistic beings that by all logic should not exist in a shower of sprinkling lights and choir music performing a super secret healing art Sephiroth didn't even know he had and relieved them of their pain. The silver-haired lunatic blinked. Where had that thought come from? Meanwhile, halfway across the world, which meant about 15 minutes of walking on foot, Cloud and party is busy engaging nameless cannon fodders, turn-based style, and losing numerically based health. Yes, they are not losing blood or anything because that would just be ridiculous. I mean, what kind of person bleeds when they are cut by sharp claws instead of losing HP? No siree, numbers are the way to go at the moment. Aerith is in the middle of casting her limit break, great gospel, while Cloud and Tifa waited patiently for their ATP bar, the tiny gradient bar that ironically controlled their entire known universe, to fill. Strangely enough, the enemies, for reasons the author cannot comprehend, did nothing to take advantage of the fact that their foes are motionless due to cumbersome gaming mechanics. Instead, they stood where they had, glaring at Cloud but doing nothing to harm him because everyone knows acting out of turn is blasphemous and could result in whiny reviewers plaguing the internet about how unbalanced the game is. Nope, the dragons will stay right where they are. Thank you very much. Which means Aerith is the only one doing anything while Cloud pondered on the meaning of life and why monster drop skills when they die. Really now, why would monsters who have no pockets or any kind of accessories to carry items and have items in the first place? However, as the blonde turned to face one of his companion who would die anyway, there seemed to be a troubling expression upon the young woman's face. Aerith, what's bothering you? Apparently ATP bars did not restrict one's ability at conversation. Aerith frowned and continued to look up in the sky where the angels are descending and healing everybody. One of the angels seems well odd, yet Tifa joined the conversation, not wanting Aerith to hog blonde bition and all to herself. I mean, I thought angels have 2 wings and they are supposed to be white. No, Aerith did not mean anything racist by that, since she is neither Caucasian or African American or Asian or Latino or any other ethnic group to begin with. Seriously, she's friggin' non-human people. Then it dawned on Cloud. Sephiroth, blonde swordsman, screamed in half anger, half horror and revulsion. Anger because Sephiroth is crazy like that, and horror because he discovered only too late that the silver-haired pretty boy is wearing nothing, and I mean nothing, under the gown. 3 pairs of eyes were blinded on that day and had to have a 4th teammate who apparently resides in the middle of nowhere when she is not called on cast 12 different healing spell on them. It was agreed by all that none of them would ever speak of the great gospel again. Incidentally, that my children is why Cloud decided to pursue Sephiroth through 2 entirely different Square Enix game franchises and a CG movie.